two awesome special guests here. Make them feel loved. Come on, guys, make them feel loved. If you don't make them feel loved, they're gonna run away, hide in their rooms for the entire weekend, and that's not gonna be good because I need you guys for stuff. If I have to come to your room and drag you by your feet, or your feet paws, I will. Don't put it past me. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get this started. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have our guests of honor introduce themselves, talk them about themselves a little bit, how they got into furry, what they do now, all that good stuff. And then what we'll do, we'll open it up for the audience to ask any questions they like. Make sure they're not R-rated questions. PG-13. Remember that. We have a child in here, so keep that in mind.
You don't have to call me out.
We do have 2 children in here, so please keep that in mind. Actually, we have 3. Okay, we have 3 children here. But let's go ahead and get started. Ursula, we'll go ahead and start with you first, and then we'll start with Mark Sparks. Here you go.
Hey everybody, is this working?
Are you working? Yes.
Okay, excellent. Hi, I'm Ursula Vernon, aka T. Kingfisher. I write books. I've written quite a lot of books now. In furry, you may probably know me best for a very long comic called Digger that was about 800 pages, and it was a webcomic. It went on for many years. And these days I actually write a lot of horror novels, which aren't that furry, but usually do have a friendly animal of some sort in them. And I wrote a bunch of books for kids, as there's that were about a little anthropomorphic dragon named Danny, and a series called Hamster Princess about a fierce warrior hamster princess who, fought bad guys and I was about to say fought crime or solved crimes. No, did not solve any crimes. The theme of the con is bleeding into my brain, clearly. Let's see, I actually got into furry because I am old. I had never heard of it, had no idea what it was. I had always been drawing sort of, anthropomorphic animals, did not know it was a thing until they invented the internet. And somewhere around 1996 or 97 or so, I was like, oh hey, there's these places that have all of this art. What is this thing? VCL. What is this? And it was an eye-opening experience. So yes, that is kind of. I just sort of fell sideways into it, which is how I fall sideways into a lot of things. So.
Oh, that sounds like me.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to move on to Mark Sparks.
Hello.
Okay, don't speak that loud.
Oh, no. Hello. I am Mark Sparks. I am a YouTube and Twitch, and I've done a lot of stuff as far as social media goes, but most of these days I've been sticking it with YouTube and Twitch, in which most of the stuff I focus on positivity and a lot of community and charity work. I've been doing that for close to 6 years, but prior to that I was been in the Army for 5 years prior to that, and I was doing YouTube and Twitch while I was in the Army. That was fun, don't do that. But as far as getting into the fandom, I actually got the fandom probably about 2009. I ran into somebody on Xbox Live who actually told me about it, and I was just a huge fan of Star Fox, and it just called to me, and I was like, okay, I need a character. And then he was born, and I've had him since. He's very old.
Nerd.
But yes, other than that, if you were here for opening ceremonies, the statue that was given in honor of Dog Bomb, that's because for the North Carolina community, I've been doing ALS work for both Dog Bomb and my dad. And so far we've raised close to about $135,000 for the ALS Association North Carolina chapter. So, thank you guys.
Okay, you guys also have some panels that you're going to be hosting too as well.
Yes.
So why don't you go ahead and tell people what time those are going to be and what it's going to be about.
I'm glad that we both went for our schedules.
Unfortunately, I don't know your schedule either, and I'm the one who wrote.
Look at my schedule.
Did you actually print it out?
Yeah.
Okay, I have it written on my phone.
Okay.
Here you go.
At 8:30 this evening, I will be on a match game, whatever that means. It will be an adventure for everyone. Okay. And tomorrow at 10 a.m., I will be publishing furry fiction, and that's actually and the D&D charity event at 2 p.m. And yes, I think that's all you actually got me down.
I think so. I mean, if you're going to complain, I've got plenty of stuff for you to do.
We will find.
Doc, pull up our programming schedule. I'm sure we probably can find something for you to do. You made the wrong mistake of mentioning.
You never complain.
Exactly. We actually need to vacuum back here too. I don't want to take care of that.
For me, I have tonight at 5, we'll be doing the how to stream, which we're just going to be going through a walkthrough. And we might also be streaming that depending on the hotel's Wi-Fi. And then obviously we're going to be doing the D&D charity event. I will also be there for that one at 2 p.m. tomorrow. And then the military first panel, which I will be hosting, will be from 5 to 5:45. If you are military or veteran, you are welcome. It's nothing crazy. I promise I will not kill you with slideshows. And then after that, I'll be at the charity auction on Sunday morning.
Oh yeah, you're also going to be at the charity auction Sunday morning. Because I'm hosting that, but I also need more bodies.
It's funny, they had a wonderful note, like the text.
We're to ramp up and get more.
That was like the alphabet on my car.
Yeah, I'm going to be the auctioneer, but you guys are going to be helping. You get to be Vanna.
Yeah, you should get it.
So you have to make sure you're really fancy to every time the item set up. You got to be like,
Yeah, I got it.
this is the item. Look at it. It's so pretty. Oh my God, it's so gorgeous. You have to do exactly that.
I got you.
If you don't, I'm going to be really upset. So, now that we got that out of the way, does the audience have any questions for our guest of honor? If not, I can ask them a ton. Yes?
Put on the phone.
I'm loud, but I can use the microphone. There you go.
Hello. Mark, your suit is very white. What do you do to keep it still white?
I pray sometimes and hope that it goes away. No, actually, the green machine that Bissell has does that with full X. Works wonders on especially white suits, because God only knows how many times I decided to bring it to eat somewhere and then get a little bit of dirty on it, but it works wonders, the Bissell and full X.
Have you ever spilled like red wine or spaghetti sauce or something on it?
There is, so actually, one of my hand paws, I did not realize that by putting it in the dryer, you could, because it had the plastic fingernails or the plastic claws, by putting it in the dryer, I essentially melted those. So, unfortunately, the Bissell does not work on that. But other than that, like, luckily nothing too crazy as far as food spills.
Oh no, I melted my hand claws. They're a puddle of goo. That's nasty. Ew. Alright, does anyone else have any questions? Oh, we have more questions.
Run, Doctor, run! Run for your life!
I'm getting old, I don't run anymore.
I love you.
Mark, was it?
I think so, yes. I think so.
No, his name's actually John.
John? Okay, John. You said you liked creating content. What is your favorite type of content to create?
So that changes on a monthly basis, because it's one of those things where I watch other people's stuff and I'm like, oh man, I love vlogging. Let's do vlogging, and then I vlog for like a month and I'm like, no, this is terrible now. Let's go do something different. I'm gonna make Pun Wars Part 5 for some reason. But I love skits. It's just, it takes way too much time and energy to actually make a full-fledged skit. So that's like, I think, my favorite.
Good question, good question. Any other questions in the audience? Don't be shy. Yes. Les, this is too long.
I have a question for Miss Vernon. Are you going to have any books for sale at this con?
Probably tomorrow I will have some books. Yes, probably tomorrow I will have some books. Sadly, I will not have any Digger because the first Kickstarter run sold out like 10 years ago, and they're still working on printing the next run. But I will have some other completely random books that I would be happy to sell you. Or if you have books and you want them signed, I will do that. That doesn't cost anything. You don't have to buy a book. I will sign things.
Put this one on the car.
I am happy to do so.
Within reason.
Within reason, yes. That is my husband. Yes, there are some things I will not sign. I will leave that to your imagination. However, I've signed a lot of things. I once signed a pickaxe handle with a Dremel drill so that it was engraved in there at a convention, which I think the hotel staff was a little weirded out.
How that happened.
I swear I usually don't bring power tools.
I mean, I'm not judging you. You do whatever you want, boo boo. I'm just like, okay. I'm just gonna be like this. That's the look I'm gonna give you. Actually, the look I'm gonna give you all.
That's a baseline. That's baseline.
That's my baseline look. And, shut up, Siri. She wants me to like go to Thrizalokana, which looks like a city. Okay, Siri. You're weird.
Besides Siri, anybody else have a question for our guest of honor? Oh,
Kofu doesn't count. Love you, Kofu.
I think Kofu counts.
A question for Mark. So, did you come up with Friendo, or you heard it from someone else?
Friendo, so I honestly do not know the origin of the term friendo. It was something, I can't remember. It was just like one of those things where I was like, I said it to somebody one time and then it just kept happening. And I was like, okay, this is either a nervous like tick that I'm doing or it's sticking in my head and it makes sense. So it continued on and I don't know. There was no actual real story as to why that happened.
The line between a catchphrase and a nervous tick is not
Anybody else have questions? Because I'm a recruiter, so I can actually ask you a ton of different questions if you'd like.
Please go.
Did we go through some of the ones asked candidates?
Are you going to ask if we were trees, what kind of trees?
No, I'm not. I don't do anything that stupid.
be afraid.
Someone has a question. I will tear it to pieces. That's what I do.
Hi, Ursula. I am on Twitter for your gardening content. Please tell me, what are you growing in your garden right now that you're really happy about?
Oh, Lord. Well, I garden a lot, and we had these, it got so cold quite recently, and I was hovering over all of the plants going, okay, is it going to freeze back here? Is everything going to, finally die down for the winter? But no, we squeaked by a degree or two, and now it's supposed to get back into the 70s next week because we live in North Carolina. So I have some sort of obscure sages that I'm very proud of. There's Himalayan cloud sage, which is from the Himalayas. I mean, it's right on the tin, and it's cool. It gets really tall, it gets these little yellow flowers, and there's a rare, weird. It's related to asparagus. It's all by itself. It is a strange little plant that it comes from the Texas Gulf Coast region, and it's endangered. It's Echindia texensis, and it gets this weird little flower spike with yellow flowers on it. It is very pretty, and its closest relative is apparently asparagus. So go figure. I grow some very sort of weird stuff because what's the point of having a garden if you grow completely normal stuff? At that point, you might as well have the Lowe's parking lot.
Let's see, might as well make it interesting and fun.
It sounds like the plant version of one of your characters.
Yeah, it's obscure, a little weird.
And that describes me a little bit.
And flowery?
I can be. I'm like, as innocent and beautiful as a flower. Shut up, Doc. No one asked you. All right, does anyone else have questions? Okay. Oh boy. Let's just say candidates don't like the questions that I ask because I ask some really intensive ones.
My daughter would like to know when you got your badge.
Which one? Oh, Mark, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't
I thought you were talking to me. I was like, oh.
Is it this bad?
Yes.
The maker of this badge it's probably Mars, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. I looked at her who got it for me. But it probably Mars did it. You can look them up on Twitter.
Not a problem.
It is a very snazzy badge. They're very cute too for stuff. All right, anyone else have questions? Oh, we haven't. Okay, I'll ask you some.
So this where do you get inspiration for puns?
Oh, for puns. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I grew up in a family of very terrible comedians. As in, they don't do it for a real job. My inspiration from puns originated from, if you've seen it, back in the day, the old MASH TV show. Because that's what I grew up on. And then our entire family just started, any way that we could put in a pun into any situation was how we started doing it. And then it unfortunately got to a point where we kind of only communicated in puns and had to dial it down a little bit. And so that's kind of where I pull that inspiration from.
Okay, does anyone else have questions? I'll ask you one. This one always throws candidates for a loop, and I love it. What is your greatest weakness, and how do you overcome it?
Sometimes I work too hard, and wait, do you want the actual answer or the I'm trying to get a job answer?
Go ahead and give me like an actual answer that you're on top of.
No, wait, because the actual answer, there's the true answer and there's the I'm trying to get a job answer.
Give me the truth answer.
The truth answer is, good Lord, I'm easily distracted. I have serious ADHD, so I can, at any moment, a shiny object will wander into view, or I will follow a link on Wikipedia and I will be gone for 3 hours. And I will come back knowing more about the Serbio-Bulgarian conflict of 1895 than anyone needed to know. But
okay, that works for me.
okay, but you have to also tell us at the end what the good answer is to get the job.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna lie, especially as far as like anything, my hardest one is social anxiety. I'm not gonna lie, it's something that, especially in a job when I was in the military, it's like you have to be able to vocalize and communicate and be able to talk at a level where it's not just you blurting out of just a crap ton of information, but to associate that information in a list in a timely manner. And it took me the longest time, and it's still something that I work on, to actually sit there, calm down, and communicate appropriately what that answer is.
Good one. So, if we don't have more questions, I can actually tell you, like, a lot of people, whenever I'm interviewing them, they always say they do too much, or they take on too much, and they're trying to learn not to take on too much. That's the most popular answer that I get. Just a little bit of job advice, though. If you get fired from a job, or you leave it, don't go into a lot of detail about it. Just simply say, I left for personal reasons, and leave it at that. Do not go into any more detail. Because most of the time your employer is going to be like, okay. If they want more answers, they'll inquire with you. When someone tells me that, I'm just like, cool. But I do ask them if they were fired or let go from any previous jobs, though. I did have one lady who got fired because she threw lab equipment at her boss. She got fired for this 3 times. So...
That seems like a red flag on the resume.
I've been doing this for 5 years, so I've had some stories. Actually, I probably should make an entire panel of candidates that I've spoken to and some of the crap they've said. a ton. I'm also the type of recruiter that if you give me attitude, I will not put you in for a job. And I will tell you bluntly, you need to change your attitude or you're not getting put in. Which one would you like? And I deal with PhDs all day, so they love to give me attitude. The moment they start giving me attitude, I give them attitude right back. You know how quickly that changes them? Instantly. Instant respect. Because they realize they can't talk down to me, so then they change their attitude. So keep that in mind.
I only have a BA.
Well,
I promise I will try not to talk down to
I've hired CEOs who thought they could talk down to me, and then they realized very quickly that they couldn't. And then they gave you mad respect, which is always fun. All right, do we have any extra questions for our guests, though? Oopsie.
Oh, Doc has a question.
Very straightforward question. So, Ursula, why a wombat?
Everybody always asks why a wombat. The hero of Digger was a wombat, and the answer is I was very new to comics. It only just occurred to me that as an illustrator I could draw a comic, and that was a thing I could do. And which should not have been a revelation, but I didn't really grow up reading comics, so it was like suddenly a bolt from the blue. I could just put word balloons, and oh my god, that's a comic. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna do this, I should create a character design that I can draw, that because I'll have to draw it a bunch of times. So I was sitting around doodling, I was like character concepts that I could simplify down, that I could draw them often enough. And I was like, what do I draw? I need something to draw. And I thought it was just practice at the time, and that I was not, coming up with something I would be committed to for the next 8 years and 800 pages. And I happened to have the TV on, and at the exact moment that I was like, what do I draw? A wombat took a chunk out of Steve Irwin's leg. And Steve Irwin, being Steve Irwin, was thrilled, and was telling the wombat how beautiful it was, and it's stomping along, and he's chasing it, telling it it's a beautiful wombat, and bleeding profusely, and I'm like, oh. So I started drawing wombats. They're fascinating creatures. They're very odd. They have armored rumps, and they get very large. They can weigh like up to 70, 80 pounds, and they I wound up talking to a lot of wombat rehabilitators in Australia who are, I think if you do wildlife rescue in Australia, you are a special breed of human because they have some stuff down there. And the wombats, they said, were actually really easy to rehabilitate because they were delightful as babies, they loved people, they were playful, they were smart, they enjoyed interacting, and then as soon as they hit the teenage years, they became extremely surly and were like, I don't want to talk to anybody, I want to go out into the bush and dig up the foundations of your house. And so you could release them very easily once they hit the teenage years because they were like just done with people. They didn't get, socialized to live with humans the way that a lot of animals do. They were like, nope, I'm out of here.
So basically an angsty teenager?
Exactly, yes. Except they just sort of continue that for the rest of their life. They're just like, I'm done with people.
A 90s angsty teenager. I hate you, ma'am. And then slam yourself in your room and listen to Three Doors Down. God, I'm showing my age. Oh my God.
Gen X was very wombat in many regards.
Well, if someone's going to ask you about your persona, Mark Sparks, how did you come up with yours?
So I'm not gonna lie, it's very weird because I was just like, I took a Myers-Briggs personality test because my mom is a psychiatric nurse. And I was like, she told me about this and I was like, okay, I'll look it up and then I'll type in whatever it tells me and look it up and see what I get. And it ended up being like, oh, well, you're a dog because you love a lot and you're really stupid, so have fun. So I was like, okay, well, so then I played with the ideas and concepts, and originally what I wanted to be was an Arctic Fox because I liked Crystal from Star Fox. I was like, oh, well, I want to make something like that. So I'm not as crazy in colorations, but it's the same color pattern. It's blue and white, and I don't know, I was like 13, so he's pretty plain, but that's kind of what fits my personality, so just kept with it.
Actually, Funny thing, I actually got a furry hired on in a job. Yeah. Basically, I sent out something, and he emailed me back, but he emailed me back from his wrong account. So he emailed me back from his furry account, and I saw his icon. I'm like, oh, so I was interviewing him. I'm like, oh, by the way, cool icon. He's like, oh my God, did I email you from the wrong one? I am so sorry. It's like, dude, calm down. It's like, I hang out with furries. You're good. And then he was like so excited. And then like we had a nice long conversation. Then I got her hired on for $10,000 more than what he was asking for. Because I'm good like that.
Furries in tech, if all the furries in the tech industry suddenly quit, the internet would collapse in place.
That's the reason why they're not allowed on the same plane.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if it goes down, then we're all just screwed. Oh, Kofu has a question.
Run! Careful on the stairs.
Run for your life!
I said run, not walk.
Okay.
You can waltz though.
I'll skip.
Okay, that works.
So two questions for both of you. What's your guys' favorite drinks, alcohol-wise? And also, when you think about North Carolina, what do you feel or think what represents North Carolina?
So as far as alcoholic drinks, I'm partial to a Long Island. It's just an easy go-to. But as far as North Carolina, like growing up, because I'm from Hickory, North Carolina, closer to the foothills. And I always think of, when it comes to North Carolina, if it's not cheerwine, liver mush, or dogwood trees, I don't know where else I would be. So that's like my main three.
It is good.
I am fond of tequila, but actually good tequila, not the bottom shelf stuff. The difference between good and bad tequila is probably vaster than any other beverage in the world. The good stuff is amazing. The bad stuff is, it'll strip paint off, cars, walls, cows in nearby fields. Let's see, is it what represents North Carolina? What I think of, well, the two things I think of, first of all, because I'm a gardener, is Venus flytraps. North Carolina and South Carolina are the only place in the world where Venus flytraps are found. They're from here, and they're highly endangered because people like to poach them, and they were always kind of rare and in weird places anyway. So Venus flytraps, and probably red wolves, because we have the I think only wild population of red wolves left in North America, and there aren't that many of them there, but they're there, we have them. So that would probably be the things I usually think of. Well, and I'm not from here, so originally I've just lived here for decades and some change, so I have kind of a mixed relationship with barbecue, I admit.
Carolina barbecue is
vinegar based.
We got to get Kimura on the class sometime this weekend. All the close ones one is here. Either there or Florida.
That's okay. The important thing is you guys have it, and people who love it, and that's what.
definitely do the pulled pork. Oh, we have another question, Doc. Go, Doc, run. That was angry.
This question is for Mark. What is Papa Barks?
Yeah, I did mention that and then go fully explanation. Thank you. So Papa Barks is when I first started. Okay. So basically, Papa Barks is the event that I organize once a year, which is it's all on Twitch. But it's basically when I found out that my father got diagnosed with ALS in 2019. I was trying to figure out how I could, I guess, help him fight that. But this ALS, unfortunately, is a disease that doesn't have a cure. So my immediate instinct was, well, hey, like, all my friends have done charity events. I've done charity events with my friends. So why not start an event that goes to help fight alongside them? So that's how Papa Bark started. Papa Barks is just the nickname that I gave to my dad. And it's basically, it's on its 3rd year old. It's going out into its 4th year. We're going to be doing it again next year. But yeah, that's pretty much what Papa Barks is.
Sorry very much for that. Hopefully all this research and all the money that you're getting will help with the cure, or at least be able to help them slow down the disease tremendously.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, because unfortunately it does not have any kind of cure, so... Any other questions? I've actually got some pretty good questions so far, so... Anybody else?
I could do it, Mikey.
What question?
This is to both. Very open-ended question. What is your favorite furry-related movie? If you had to call a movie somewhat furry-related, what's your favorite furry-related movie?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I want to follow that up with, after that one, what is your favorite furry-related TV show?
Oh Lord, that is a tough one. I mean, my favorite animated movie is Spirited Away, but I don't know if that's furry adjacent enough. It has a dragon, yeah, and an anthropomorphic radish, which I feel like ought to be worth something. So.
Kaku is definitely like so.
Yeah, and I really love the radish. So Spirited Away.
As far as the movies go, gosh, it's gonna sound weird. I know a lot of people didn't like the movie, but Bolt the Super Dog was like my inspiration when I first started getting into the furry fandom. And then as far as TV, that's a harder one for me because I can't really think of anything other than like Looney Tunes as far as like stuff that oh no, actually, if any of you watch anime, B&A. B&A is like top-notch stuff.
TV show-wise, I mean, there's been so many good ones over the years, but I really enjoyed Amphibia recently. That was really cute and has lots of talking frogs, and which is more slimy than furry, but sick. Also, Owl House is fantastic and is sort of quasi-furry adjacent as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I have a question for Marks, since you do play video games. What is your favorite genre?
Favorite genre of video games is 100%. I'm a big fan of strategy games, but I'm not good at them. So I do my best to make it sound like I'm really good to scare people. So that way, whenever they whip me, I'm like, oh man, I clearly like made it so that you have to work harder. When in reality, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just like to click and point and shoot things. That's pretty much it.
Personally, my favorite are horror games. I've played so many of them, I'm desensitized to them now, so none of them scare me. Fatal Frame 2 had me crying at the end because of the ending. That was one of the very first games that ever had me bawling. Because the ending is just so good, because I wasn't expecting it. I could talk to you about Fatal Frame all day, because it's one of my favorite horror series.
I started it like at, mid-afternoon, and my husband's like, I'm gonna go up to the bedroom. I'm like, you're not leaving this room.
And then I turned off the lights.
I like you. That's evil. I like it.
And we weren't even married yet.
I'm surprised she still married you after that.
God damn.
She should have been like, alright, bye. See ya. Do we have any other questions? So we slated this for an hour, but we don't necessarily have to go for an hour if nobody else has any questions.
I don't have any questions right now, but I do have a funny just snapshot here. So I'm looking at the two guests of honor, lovely guests of honor, looking at Mikey talking, and I kind of have my peripheral just for any raised hands, and I keep seeing the tip of Donkey Kong sticking up. And it's just like, every time I'm like, oh, a question! Oh no, it's just his head. So,
you're like, Donkey Kong has a question?
He has a question. Yeah. I guess I could have a question.
Okay.
Go back in the memory, way back in the memory. Do you remember what was, to both of you, what was your first furry con, and give me a fond memory from that first furry con?
Mine was Midwest Fur Fest in 2002, maybe? I don't remember. It was very, very long ago, and my fondest memory is I'd never been a dealer at a con before, and people would give me money for art, and many of them knew who I was, and this was utterly baffling because I was just some weirdo who like sat in the apartment and painted things, and here were all these people who knew who I was and would give me money for doing it. It's honestly, that still weirds me out a little.
It's mind-boggling.
For me, my first one was FWA 2016. I had actually just got back from a deployment in South Korea and then was on a temporary assignment in Savannah, Georgia. Came back and then immediately was like, okay, well now that I actually can go, I'm gonna go. And FWA was 2016 was my first one. And that's where I met a lot of really good friends in my life. And there's a lot of really fond memories, in all honesty. That was probably one of the most meaningful con experiences I ever had because I got to meet a lot of the close friends that I had in my life there. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, then let's go ahead and give a round of applause for both of our guests of honor. No. Did you guys want to end with anything? Words of wisdom?
Come to our panels. Come see us at panels. I assume we will be hanging out and say hi.
Yes, pretty much you're both mine for the entire weekend.
So I realized after the fact, because I didn't know, but this con is doing their own scavenger hunt, and I thought it'd be cute to do a separate scavenger hunt. So if you go by the guest of honors table and you see a scavenger hunt, it's not affiliated directly with the con, but there is some fun prizes if you can go through that. Sorry, I completely forgot about that.
Oh, you're fine. All right, before we close out, do we have any other questions? Words of wisdom? Oh, we have a question.
Kind of a flip side to the previous question. What's one of your horror stories of a different fur convention, or like the most traumatizing thing that happened to you?
Okay, this was not a specifically furry convention, and in fact, I believe it was one of those cons where it had started as a general science fiction convention, and then the furry track got so big that everybody else got mad at them and told them to go make their own con, so they did and took 90% of the con with them, kind of things. So the sad, tragic remainder of the convention, which is now defunct, so I don't mind saying anything about it, I knew none of this. They invited me as a guest, and they said they had a kids track, a programming track, and they wanted me to draw with kids or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just make sure, obviously, there is someone there who, who is good with kids, because I write kids books, but I am not small children. I have no idea what to do with them. They frighten me. They're like kind of like parrots in that regard. They are very, both extremely powerful and likely to bite, and also I'm afraid if you touch one, their bones will dissolve. So, they were like, yeah, of course. Well, it was not actually quite as true as it could have been. I wound up at the panel, which is like in a room that they have. Basically, it was a hotel room. They had ripped the beds out. There was a table, and there were some markers, and they were like, yeah, the guy will be along shortly. And I'm like, okay. And then the door opened, and two parents basically chucked their kids in and left. And I was like, wait a minute, and that is kind of how I wound up babysitting for an hour going, because the guy never showed up. And I'm like, this is, leaving aside the fact that I'm not good at this, I could have been any kind of weirdo. Do you know the legal liabilities the con would be? Yeah, my God, no, this is a terrible idea. And fortunately, my husband was also there and had been a Cub Scout leader in his youth, and so is able to talk to children and got them drawing, and they were all perfectly happy. But while I sat in the corner and twitched, and yeah.
I don't want to do a children either. It's like, why are you handing me this thing?
I have way too many con horror stories. If you've seen me at other cons, we used to hold panels about the horror stories we've all seen. Because there for a while, that's all I was doing, was going to conventions. But one of the ones that I can tell here, because it's safe for work, there was one specific, when I went to Frontal Equinox the first time, I had an injury from the military where my back was really messed up. And if you've never been to FE, it's in Toronto, Canada, which a lot of the people from Quebec and Montreal, the French Canadians come down, and some of them don't know English. So you kind of have to say hello, and I knew a little bit of French, so you'd be like, oh, bonjour, hi. And that's as far as my conversations would go. But as far as the normal conversations, it's, hello, and then you take photos, and go on your way. But there was somebody who specifically who really liked my content but didn't know English. So he ran up and immediately bear hugged me as hard as he could. And I felt so bad because I just started yelling in pain. And he let go thinking I'd fall, get down on my 2 feet. And I immediately just crumpled on the floor and laid on the ground in front of the hotel lobby for probably about an hour. The guy felt so bad, and he was a really nice guy. But next time I go to Canada, I learned that what the word for stop is in French. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so my buddy Foxfeather, who some of you may know on Twitter, has a large farm, and she keeps emus. And she's a lovely woman. She is Dr. Doolittle in human form. And Fox Love Studios, I used to go do a bunch of furry cons. And we were at Furry Fiesta in Texas, and I was a guest. And I will say I don't normally do this sort of thing at cons, I promise. But there happened to be an emu breeder near where we were that had white emus. And Fox was like, I gotta get me a white emu. And I'm like, okay, this seems reasonable. So someone drove from the breeder to Fox with 3 or 4 emu chicks in a large dog carrier. And emu chicks are, they're sizable. But that was Saturday night, and she's like, okay, we're checking out of the hotel, but, so we can drive back Sunday, but we can't just leave emu chicks in the car. That would be terrible. They would roast. And so she's like, well, I guess I'll probably just have to skip Sunday, in the dealer's room. And I'm like, no. You'll lose tons of money on that. They gave me a suite. If you promise me that the emus will not get loose, you can keep the emu chicks in my room. And she's like, I promise they will not get loose. And I'm like, okay. And the hotel staff will never have to clean up after emu poop. She's like, God, no. All right. The problem is getting a dog carrier from the car up to the suite on the 11th floor was a little more difficult than we thought, because you can't just walk through with an open cat carrier, because people will stop and want to know what you're carrying. And of course, the hotel is not necessarily going to want livestock in the rooms. And so she put them in a box in his carrier, and I had been assured that emus were silent and did not vocalize. And we're standing in the elevator, there's 3 of us, and the box begins peeping. And there are 2 furries and a businessman who had been staying at the hotel, and they all look at us in the box, and we immediately panic and start trying to cover the peeping noises. And one friend of ours starts sort of singing an aria, and I'm trying to hum Bridge on the River Kwai, And Fox is just like looking like, I don't know these people. I'm just standing here with my box that is peeping. And the furries and the businessmen are like, they're obviously in a cult, and they kind of inch away from us a little. And they get off, and we get to my suite with the emus, and we're like, wow, we are not smooth at all. And it was fine. The emus did not get in the vents. No one died. We kept them in the bathtub so that if there were any, spray over events, the staff would not have to deal with it. And the only thing worth noting is that years later, when I felt the statute of limitations had passed, I was very drunkenly telling this to a friend of mine. I was like, wait, you're not affiliated with the con, I can tell you about it. And his partner was standing next to him, who happened to be the con chair that year. And he was like, we're not using that hotel anymore anyway. I promise there are no emus in my hotel room at this moment.
Are you sure?
Well, I haven't actually been up in the last half hour, but I didn't put them there if they are.
If I hear peeping coming from your room, then I know what's going on.
Yeah.
You're just gonna hear little peeps, and you're like, that's not mine.
I was literally holding.
I was framed! I promise I was framed!
I was holding for a friend.
Sure. Holding for a friend.
It's your emulator.
Oh, emulator! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha!
Applause, applause.
No chickens in the hotel.
I don't think she kidnapped the chickens and brought them with her, did you?
No, there's
What's in the code of conduct, Mikey?
I don't think we have in the code of conduct anything about not having chickens in your room.
Don't bring chickens.
Please don't bring chickens into your room. This is not me telling you to do that. If you do, we'll have to kick you out, and then I'll laugh at you. But I think that's it, because we have Fursuit games coming up at 3 in here.
Yes.
So make sure you come by for those. Those should be a lot of fun. We are actually going to be hosting your very first Fursuit panel in the panel room here at 3 o'clock as well. So for those who haven't been to a con before, or just need a little refresher, we'll help you out there.
Or laugh at our previous stories.
Or laugh at that, yeah. Laugh at us because we're hilarious. And some of us are just funny looking, Doc.
We make bad decisions, that's why.
We do make bad decisions. All right, so thank you guys so much for coming out. Let's give a round of applause to our guest of honor. Thank you, guest of honor. You're welcome. Now go away. But I mean that in the nicest way possible. Well, let me get out of the way then. Scoot, scoot, Ryan. Scoot, scoot.
For us, a good chance to get some shots without me in them. Just I'm not in every single one.
When you see a big group, come get with us.